Welcome to Remake TV. I'm Jasmine Bowen, and you're watching The Elephant in the Room. And on this episode, we have Erin Hatton, who's sharing her stories of starting as a writer who wasn't published years ago. And you got very lucky with your book, OTHERWORLD. You actually won a great contest and got it published, and now you're a full-time published author.
Yes, I am.
So, I know a lot of people out there, you're like, I want to be a writer, but I don't know how to get started, or writers don't make any money, or all of this, but this is not true. So, Erin, why don't you tell us first about OTHERWORLD? What happened with that?
With OTHERWORLD, it was, well, most of my writing, I've been writing all my life, but this one, it just sort of, it flowed. It came to me during sermons at my church, during songs. It would just, bits and pieces of the story would just come together in my head, and this one really came together. Some of my stories that I've written before haven't been quite so easy, and I've taken a lot of workshops that have really helped me with that, learned from other authors, and that's helped me to follow through on my writing to start to finish, and it's really paid off.
Now, OTHERWORLD was originally a manuscript that was entered in a contest. So
yes, it was.
Can you tell me the details about that contest? How many people were entered?
There were hundreds of books.
Wow!
It was through Word Alive Press, and I did get a third place in the contest. Wow! And so they offered me a publishing deal for that, and well, here it is.
Here it is. So tell me a little bit about it, because the cover looks kind of menacing there. So what is the story about?
Well, the story is, it's basically a romance.
Okay.
It takes place in modern day, our world, but it also has that supernatural idea of another world that interlaces with our world. And this romance, it is what inspired me is really the love story between Christ and the church, and the idea that humankind is so broken and seemingly beyond redemption, and that Christ would come and give his life for us. And so that inspired me to just boil it right down to the romance. And the main character's Emma. She's sort of the figure of the church. She's a prostitute. She's kept as a slave, basically, by this drug that she's dependent on. And Cale, who is the Christ figure, he comes into this to try and deliver her from that, just to help her to get away from the drug, away from this crime boss who's keeping her captive. So
your book was definitely very inspired by God, by the Christian religion.
Yeah.
When did it first come to you? Were you just sitting there and
in church and sermons? And I mean, I grew up in the church. I have a loving family. They've told me all my life how loved and valued I am, and I still struggle with my sense of self-worth, and I know a lot of other people do, and this book was really me coming to terms with that, how much I am loved, how much I am valued, and it just sprung from that gradually, a little bit at a time. It's like it just sort of unfolded for me.
And there's definitely a lot of people out there, young people and old people, who are struggling with their self-image and struggling to kind of find confidence in their life. And I read this book, and I definitely think it inspires people to go out there and to follow their mission, whatever it is, whatever they're called to do. It's kind of, I guess, the most mainstream thing is Narnia is kind of comparing to it. Yeah,
I did draw on some. I've loved fantasy Narnia, all my life. Yeah. So I was drawing heavily on that. But you do see evidence of that, like reading through the Bible, and it's talking about just this spiritual battle that's going on all around us, and this world that we can't see. So I really wanted to include that because I think that loving other people is a way of fighting back against.
So have you felt that writing this book, and since having it published, has kind of helped your self-image?
Absolutely, but it's still every day. Every day I have to remind myself that I'm loved, that I'm worth something, and so I really hope that this book helps other people with that too.
Now, Erin, you have 4 children.
I do.
And you have twin girls as well, and they're all very young. So how did you manage, especially to maybe stay-at-home moms out there who are trying to get things done with children in the house, how did you manage to write a whole book?
Well, some days are easier than others. And you've met my children, they're very high energy.
Yeah.
But I did it an hour at a time, here and there, just keeping that constant flow. Even if you can only get in 15 minutes, it's something.
Yeah.
And it keeps that in your mind. And I'm a firm believer that, especially moms, but everybody needs to take some time to do something that's them, that's for them. And that's a way that you can be there for other people, because you can't just keep giving and giving and giving and not recharge yourself. And for me, creating is that recharging for me. So
is there a particular place in your house that you go to feel inspired, or is it just kind of everyday life that brings the creativity?
It can be in the middle of everyday life. I definitely sometimes need my daily dose of quiet for thinking. Hey, if you're a stay-at-home mom, sometimes the bathroom's the only place you can go. Lock the door. And, although my kids get very, personally offended when I lock the door and leave them on the other side.
Even if it's only for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need that. Now, you've written, this is not your first book, though it's your first full novel.
Yes, that's right.
Now, what else have you written?
I've written 18 short stories.
Wow.
Some of them are published. I have 5 published in various anthologies, and then I have an anthology of 7.
Okay.
And my solo anthology is all Regency era romance stories. I just love Jane Austen and that time period, so it was just something fun.
Now, is there a lot of research that goes into writing stories of that time period?
Absolutely. I really wanted to make sure I had it all down pat, all the details, so that somebody who knew anything about it wouldn't go through and go, oh, that's not right.
You wouldn't be getting angry fan letters.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you gotten fan letters yet?
I wouldn't call them fan letters, but a couple of people who read Otherworld have sent me letters, have taken the time and just said how inspiring it was for them. And actually, I got 2 of them on the same day, and it was a day when I really needed it. So it was nice.
So they come when you need them.
Yes,
sure.
exactly.
So now, what sort of promotion have you done with Otherworld? Because I know it got published and you kind of got thrown into it. I mean, all of a sudden, here's a book that's just your own, and there's nobody else. So what's the journey of going through it once it's published?
Well, I really have to credit my husband with a lot of that. Kevin he's a shameless promoter for me, and that's really not me at all. But I mean, going back to some of my old schools, I graduated from Redeemer University College, and I went there for their alumni weekend, and they featured me in their magazine there, and
kind of a success story coming out of the school.
And just maintaining a presence with social networking sites like Facebook and Twitter. I try and keep up with that.
Have you found that, because social networking is very new, have you found that some of your sales are actually coming off there?
I don't know for sure, but I'm sure it doesn't hurt to really be out there and have people seeing my name and seeing the book.
Now, Otherworld is very, it's a very straightforward story in a way, but very complicated. Are there any plans to maybe write a screenplay for it?
There might be some plans in the works, but that's coming along.
All right. So what's coming up next for you? What are you working on right now?
Right now, I'm working on something. Actually, I started long before Otherworld. It's a family history novelization about 3 of my ancestors who were involved in missions and ministry hundreds of years ago.
Right.
So, and just the hardships that they went through. Like, for example, my great-great-great-aunt was in China as a missionary during the Boxer Rebellion. She was under siege in Peking, and we have, thanks to my grandfather, a whole bunch of original sources. Her Bible with notes in the margins, letters home, journals. It's really amazing to have that. But it's challenging to go through all the research.
What do you find is the most challenging? I mean, are you trying to stick to fact by fact, or is it more historical fiction?
I'm trying to stick to the facts that we have and find out as many facts as I can. And it seems like there's never enough. I never know enough facts. And so I'm always worried that there's one more fact I haven't found yet. But it really is. I'm finding that there's so much, I really don't have to fictionalize much.
Okay, so you do have a lot of research already,
I do.
Which is great, because a lot of people who are researching back in their family, they don't have anything, but you have a whole family full of people to inspire you.
Yes, absolutely.
So when did you decide, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be a writer, I'm going to enter this contest?
The contest, a friend of mine actually works for the publisher, and he was sort of elbowing me in the ribs every time he saw me. You got to enter this contest. You got to enter this contest. And so I finally did. And but the writing, I mean, that's ever since I could write. My parents had this old electric typewriter in the days before computers.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, that was me. I was typing away on that. And yeah, so I have a whole bunch of stuff that I wrote.
Did you go to school for writing?
I didn't. I went to school for education and music.
Okay.
So go figure.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you don't know where life's going to lead us.
Exactly.
Right? So did you ever know, I mean, you liked writing, but did you ever think I can do this professionally?
Sometimes I hoped.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be a mom first and foremost. So everything else is just bonus. So.
Although along the way.
Yeah.
Are your children at all, or your family, any inspiration in this book?
In this particular book, certainly I've seen the way give and take and forgiveness and unconditional love has played out in my relationship with my husband.
Yeah.
My children certainly inspire me in a lot of ways. Maybe not specifically for this book, but in other books, I've had a lot of family relationships and drawn on my experience as a mom.
So it's always been a religious family for you?
Yeah, really, right from the get-go.
No, what religion were you raised as?
Christian, evangelical Christian, I guess you could say.
And this is what you're following with your family now?
Yes.
For sure? 100%?
Yeah, 100%.
Why did you decide to stick to it? I mean, there's so many people who, they grow up and they get away from their family and they decide, religion is not for me, or this different religion suits my family more. But you have obviously had some good experiences.
I have had a very positive experience in my upbringing, but more than that, I just can't even imagine a life, a family without that foundation of faith.
Yeah.
And so for me, for my kids, for my husband, we're all on the same page.
That's great. Even with 4 kids, to get them on the same page in anything, I think is quite a task. So would you recommend or hope that your children would become writers? Has it been a great experience for you, or are there too many bumps along the way?
I would be thrilled if they wanted to pursue that. I wouldn't expect them to go into the family business or anything like that. But my kids have already shown tons of imagination with stories and trying to write little stories that the same way I used to when I was little. So it's nice to see that come out in them.
Even the little ones?
Oh, even the little, they don't write their stories down, but they sure can tell them.
So creativity, it starts very young. You put it in their blood.
Yeah, pretty much.
Now, what has been the biggest challenge, do you think, in being a writer over the years?
The biggest challenge, well, for the longest time was finishing, seeing something through. And I would get this great idea and I'd work on this wave of inspiration, and then it would just sort of dwindle and I wouldn't know where to go with it.
Yeah.
But I took lots of classes, workshops, read books. One book that really helped me was The Outlandish Companion by Diana Gabaldon. And she talked a lot in that about her writing process.
Right.
And she actually writes, not in a linear fashion, but just scene by scene, whatever comes to her mind at the moment.
Okay.
And then she sort of strings it together after the fact, and that really helped me.
Yeah. So Otherworld was written kind of like they film a movie, not in sequence?
Sometimes, yeah. Otherworlds came to me, mostly linearly, but I had an idea of where I was going, and I'd go to the things that inspired me.
So, but the biggest bump in the road has just been, do you think, getting started or getting published, or?
After getting published, I was surprised at how much goes on after that. The marketing and the
here's the book and
exactly. Yeah, so that's been difficult because I'm an introvert. I'm a creative type that likes to sit alone and be quiet at home, and so this is new for me, but it's really been helping me stretch and grow as a person.
What's the dream? What do you want to do in the future? Or what do you hope to do?
I would just like to keep going the way I'm going, just to write what inspires me, and hope that it's going to touch somebody else's life.
And aside from the book that you're working on now, is there any other ideas that are starting to form, or any?
I've got lots. I have a couple that are just strict fantasy, like time travel, world travel, like interdimensional kind of stuff.
What are you going to do that's different? Because the whole time travel, world travel, it's kind of being done a lot now. But thankfully, I don't think you're doing vampires, which is
no, I'm not doing vampires.
That's good because that's done. But how are you going to inject something into your stories that's different? I mean, will you make them kind of religious or?
There's always that, because that's always in me. Not all of my stories are going to be as overt as some, like Legacy of Faith, my historical, my family fiction one, that's going to be very overt. This is more of an allegory, but some of the others, it just might be a little bit injected here or there, just because it's part of my life. It's going to be part of my writing.
I mean, it inspires you. Now, if we look at the front cover of Otherworld, this lovely lady, she kind of looks a bit like you.
I've been told that, yes.
That you might have put yourself on the front cover instead of the back. Is Emma like you?
In some ways, but I really, in terms of physical appearance, I wanted to have her have this complete transformation from the princess that she was meant to be to the broken prostitute that Cale finds. So I was almost drawing on stereotypes in this. When she's the princess, she has the flowing golden hair and the, just what you would think of when you think of princess. And I just wanted her to be completely opposite when she was a prostitute. It wasn't necessarily drawing on myself in that sense. But in the sense of her insecurities, I certainly drew on my own for that, and I think it's almost a universal thing for people.
Well, I think everyone puts part of themselves into the character. So you are watching Remake TV. I'm Jasmine Bowen. We've been talking to Erin, the author of Otherworld, which is a great new book that's just out, and we will talk to you soon.